Welcome to the E-Free Lethbridge podcast. It's so great that you're joining us live for our second week live, I guess. That's really awesome. Joining me on the podcast, we have the Wonder Woman extraordinaire, Glenda Postman.
I didn't think up this name.
Every single week, she says the same thing. We also have with us the light at heart, Jeremy Light.
Good evening, afternoon. What is 6 o'clock?
Yes, it's only 6 o'clock. It's really light outside, so maybe it's afternoon. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Happy supper time? I don't know.
Happy supper time. We also have the head honcho, our lead pastor, Jeff Heth.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you all. He can't actually see you. I can't see you. But we are happy that you have joined us. I am your host, Levi, and we're going to kick things off with a fun morning question. So today's fun morning question. You're driving. What kind of bad driving habits? Maybe I shouldn't say bad driving habits, but what kind of driving habits that you have that others might find like strange or just like interesting, or maybe your kids in the backseat might mock you for it, or your passenger might mock you for it? What are some like bad habits?
Having teenagers is like the great prerequisite for this question. They've known how to drive better than you and corrected all of your bad ways. Once they learn to drive. I love listening to like happy clappy Jesus music in the car, and we'll like listen to it all the way to Calgary, blaring, and then as soon as I get like to the Calgary like city limits where you can see the city, I'm like, must turn all the music off. I don't know, is it getting old? Is it an old thing? I just can't multitask in the same way anymore. Cannot handle any music.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Turn it down. I can't see. I need to see more clearly. Turn it down. I need to see more clearly. Yeah,
it's perfection.
Yeah.
I think I'm not alone in this.
Yeah. I would say I do the same thing, but probably one of the habits that, I had a car when Christine and I were first dating that had a backup beeper, and it was just like a Honda Accord, so it didn't really need a backup beeper in it. But I thought it was like, it just made the car unique, and Christine mocked me for that. But I was thinking about this. I like to play little games in my head when I drive. So like if it's at night and you have your high beams on, like I pretend that's like a force field around me. And then if the other car turns their high beams off first, like they've blinked first, and I win, or whatever. But I'm also really nice, so I don't want them to get too close. So nobody knows that I'm doing this game in my head. But if they knew, now you know.
You deserve to be mocked for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Totally mockable.
Yeah, I mean that backup beeper thing there, man. Yeah, that is pretty nerdy, that's for sure.
It was so awesome.
Totally.
People are looking for this heavy equipment, and it's just still like on the board.
For me, I was chatting with my kids about this. I mean, I get a real thrill out of using the horn. So whether it is...
This is not a surprise that you're a honker.
Right. I don't do it for, like, I really, when people do bad things, I don't honk at them for bad things because I have lots of patience for that. But when my kids are walking in front of the car, oh my goodness, do I get a joy out of scaring the brains out with the horn. Or the other thing I love is when you're driving and there's people walking and you honk at them and you start to wave. I just love, sort of getting that reaction out of people there as well. So, or if I'm just driving down the road, sometimes, in the middle of the highway, I just got to honk and scare the bugs off the road. That's what I'm telling the kids anyways. So, yeah.
That's great. That's really great. I don't know if I have any bad habits. No, I'm just kidding. When I'm alone in the car, if someone's driving past me that knows me, I am an all-out singing kind of person. When I'm alone in the car, it's like I feel like people can't see me outside of the car. And so I do like the hands like this which those aren't praise hands. Those are like Beyonce, like hitting the high note hands.
Are you
Yeah.
all the single ladies?
Yeah, stuff like that. Like
Wait.
I just love being into it and singing. And yeah, we lost Jeff, but he'll be back, I'm sure. And so I just really get into it. And yeah, I don't know. I've had a few like youth leaders or youth say like, oh man, I thought you were joking when you talk about how you sing in the car, but I passed you the other day and you were belting out whatever song you were listening to. And I'm like, yeah, there's just something about being alone in the car where I can just sing my heart out. So yeah, like I feel like that is a safe space. But I have one on my spouse. Maybe I won't mock her for it,
Are
but
you allowed
when
to?
when we were dating and before we were married, we would drive together, and if she was driving, every once in a while I'd feel the car just like start to jiggle, and I'm like, what is that? Like, why? And so then I like one day I just asked her like, why do you keep doing that? And so she's actually taking the steering wheel every once in a while and just going like this. And it's because she wanted to check and make sure she still had control of the vehicle. And I just brought this back up with her, like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago upstairs. And she was like, you have to remind people if you say that she lived in BC and we were at school in Saskatchewan and we weren't used to straight flat roads. And so we are constantly turning in BC. And so we always know we have control of the vehicle. But in Saskatchewan, every once in a while, you'd have to make sure, like, we're still going straight. Like, do I still have control? Yep, still good. So that was it. She doesn't do it anymore. We don't have any more weird jiggles on the highway. But yes, it was quite the time.
Yeah, Jordana. Totally, 100%. You got to be checking to make sure the steering wheel works. Come on, why not?
Yeah. Every once in a
Also,
while.
entertainment between Swift Current and Moose Jaw.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
You need
exactly.
something. We all went to Briarcrest.
All four
We
of
all
us
did
went to
that trip.
Briarcrest.
Whoa.
We
Right.
all know. Yeah. And we all came from the west side. So we all know that drive between Calgary and Briarcrest really well. I've done that
Yeah.
trip a lot of times. So Glenda's like,
People
I'm
say
still doing that
Saskatchewan
trip.
is flat.
I'm still doing
People
that
say
trip.
Saskatchewan is flat, but that's between Brooks and the Alberta border. That is flat.
Ooh.
Right there.
That takes a long time.
That is
Good Alberta beauty. Alberta beauty, as far as the eye can see.
That's for sure. Beautiful
As
sunset.
far as I can see, to the mountains of beautiful British Columbia.
We can't go
All
there.
right, guys.
Cars.
It's time to get to the message. So this week's big idea in the message was that the gospel compels us to be ambassadors of Christ. So it takes a village. That's our main title. This week's title is Village Ambassadors. And we were right out of 2 Corinthians chapter 5. And 2 Corinthians really reminds us that we are compelled and controlled by the love of Christ. How does that love and how does that affect you in a way that it encourages you to live differently? This love of Christ, how does it compel us to live differently?
Nobody wants to go first. I'll go first. This is probably something that, like, I remember noticing this verse quite a few years ago, but definitely after I was a youth pastor in here at the church, and so it's kind of came to my mind or to my attention relatively later in life, and it's been super intriguing to me ever since then, that I would be compelled or controlled by the love of Christ, that would be my motivation. And I probably, like, to be honest, I actually struggle with that. I do more out of duty. So I'm more compelled out of what I should do or what's right to do, what I think other people think I should do, or what would be acceptable to other people. So when it comes to my Christian faith, I feel like I do things because it's what's expected, not necessarily compelled by Christ's love. So this is something that I continuously am trying to understand. How does Jesus love me, and how does that motivate me? So I'd say I'm still really on the journey of that. I'm more controlled by kind of the shoulds than the love part of it.
And for me, that's somewhere I'm on a journey too, is trying to understand the Father heart of God. But still, the sacrificial love of Jesus Christ really compels me when I look at somebody who has given up their life for my sake. When I survey the wondrous cross, on which the King of Glory died, I come to that, the quote, preach the gospel to yourself every day. That sort of sacrificial love compels me to say, yeah, why wouldn't I give up everything for Jesus? And so that's what I come back to. And I have to come back to that because I can so quickly forget that. And that gets out of my head. I get back to my selfishness. I get back to honking at people on the side of the road for my own personal enjoyment instead of loving people with the sacrificial love of Christ. So I gotta bring myself back to that and thinking about Jesus Christ giving up his life for me. That's sort of a centering force.
I was thinking after reading that passage today, like listening to it be read, I think like we use the word, I don't know if we use the word compel or control, but I was thinking that has like a positive and a negative connotation, like a positive in that it motivates me, but also not negative, but also like a constraining factor. It actually constrains how I live. So I thought that was really interesting because really both of those things are true. So when Jer says, I am motivated by duty, and I would much more fall in that I'm motivated by delight. But I think we do actually need both those things, that there's sometimes we just have to do things because we're like, it's just a step of obedience. So even when our heart isn't necessarily attached to it. But I thought that was interesting that those two words are like used in that, interchanged in that passage, that it says compel or constrain. Or control. So I thought that was like one actually means kind of restraint, and one means like motivate and move forward. So there's both this push and pull on that.
Yeah, I read a quote in prep for the message just about from N.T. Wright about the love of Christ constraining us in that way, and it was really related to what I mentioned about us becoming slaves or bond servants. The love of Christ constrains us to be, slaves to him. We give up our freedom because we've been loved so much to be obedient to Jesus Christ because he loved us so much.
I was meeting with a youth this past weekend. I was talking about how we can live out our faith. And so one of my questions I always ask youth is, where's your faith at? And they usually go to like, well, I believe this or believe that. And what's the difference between what they believe and their parents or stuff like that. But then I said, well, then how are you living that out? Like what does that look like in a day-to-day life? And I think this is where things kind of turn. If Christ really, his love compels or controls us, then our life actually should be revolving and be showing that to everyone, every situation that we're in. That should be different. In my opinion, I think so. And I think that's where this ambassador piece kind of fits into it. So how do you guys live out your role as an ambassador of Christ? Every situation, what does that look like for you guys?
I think the analogy that Jeff gave that was talking about like if you were an ambassador for another country was really good. That really made me think about things like we're really speaking on behalf of a ruler, that our authority is given to you and power is given to you in that role, in that position, that you're a messenger living in a foreign land. I thought that was a really compelling analogy, because really that's going to make us really unoffendable. It's going to make us quick to forgive, really thick-skinned about certain things, and really sensitive to like the leading of our master and the one that we follow. So I thought that was a really good analogy.
Yeah, I think for me is this idea of like witness or so both that my life has to reflect the character or the values of the kingdom, but also that people then are watching, right? And so it's pretty well known with the people in our neighborhood that I'm a pastor at the church, or that's kind of like part of my identity and part of what I do. And even when we lived in Hamilton, the same thing. We had to work out some things like it's a bit more of a Catholic background there, so that they were a little shocked that my wife was living with a priest. But
scandalous.
I know, totally. And so that was pretty awesome. But yeah, just this sense of like people are watching what we do, and again, this for me, this can really trip over into that duty side of things. To live in the sight of other people, there's a goodness to that. There's a put that in its proper place, but also then to come back to this idea that Christ's love compels us, that the Christian life isn't just about duty. It's not just about doing the right thing all the time. It's about relationship and love. And so, yeah, that's something, like I said, it's something I tip towards the doing the right things. I want to bring in more of that like joy, love, peace of the kingdom as well in our life. So,
and I love what Glenda said about the ambassador piece, and just what you mentioned, Glenda, about we can have a thick skin. We don't have to care as much, because you know what? We're not citizens of this world. We're ambassadors for the kingdom of God, and that's where our citizenship is. Even though I live here, my citizenship is in heaven. And so, what do I care in some ways what happens here? Paul certainly didn't care what happened here to some extent. For me to live as Christ and to die is gain. And so there's a freedom that comes from that to say, yeah, you know what? I want to do all I can for the kingdom of God. And whatever happens here, that's up to God. I just have to do what he calls me to do. And there is a lot of peace and a lot of freedom to that. I wasn't able to bring that out when I was talking so much, but that's really what struck me when I was meditating on that too. So
I think it's pretty significant. Sorry, Levi. I think it's pretty significant too. Like when I think of ambassador, like I think of, one person or maybe a family being sent to a foreign country to represent the interests of Canada, and they're kind of alone there, and there's nobody else around them. And I mean that's not even really true, because there actually is a whole embassy staff and there's diplomats that go with that and all those things. But that's sort of how I would view it. And what we've been called to, I love the idea of ambassador and the witness and the representation of that, but we get to, part of that is that we live it out in this like alternate kingdom here and now as well, right? So part of being an ambassador is living in community with other people who are also ambassadors of Christ, that we do this together. And that's way more joy-giving and life-giving to me than to like, okay, I'm on my own.
And that the connection to that was like that leads into this ministry of reconciliation. I love how like these pieces are tied together, that this isn't just something we do, it's actually just who we are. Like we will build those bridge. And I love the idea that, and again, the story, if you haven't listened to the sermon, you should, that Jeff talked about, they have these two fields and this guy goes and plows I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't recapture what you said. But anyway, builds this like divide in between, and this person goes and builds a bridge. Like this is not just the work that we do, it's actually who we are. It's like our identity. This is who we should be. So we should be this in our community, in the schools that we are involved in the jobs that we have, in the relationships that are surrounding us. It's what a what a tremendous call that is, because it's also reconciling people to one another, people to God, and it's a great call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
2 Corinthians 5.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to emphasize what Jared said, plural form there. It's not God is making his appeal through me. God is making his appeal through us. So how I treat Jeremy, how I treat my neighbor, how I treat people, how willing am I to come and say, you know what, I made a mistake. Can you forgive me? And how willing am I on the other side to go and say, you know what, I forgive you and I love you. And it is in this community phrase that we really speak, as ambassadors for Christ. And sorry, Levi here, but to lead into the question, just the ministry of reconciliation. That's what really speaks the gospel.
Yeah, so 2 Corinthians 5:18 says God has reconciled us to himself through Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. So how can we be reconcilers and committed to the message of reconciliation? Glenda, you brought that one up. So yeah, go ahead, Jared.
I think it's good to look at I think it's good to look at the barriers that are in the way too. Like, what are the barriers in order to do that? I mean, I think it can be pretty evident in the Christian community that we don't have the corner on the market on this all the time, and we really need to lean into this. And this is me too. How we talk to one another, how we interact with one another. I think these can be real barriers to love and reconciliation. And if it's not appealing, if it doesn't look appealing, it's not going to be appealing to other people. So I think the call is pretty heavy, because I think there's some pretty significant ditches dug.
And I think the first thing that we're aiming for really is relationship. Like, we're building the foundation of relationship in our culture, that, there's radical individualism, there's isolation, these sorts of things, and just the reconciliation of relationship. How do we initiate relationship with those people that, that around us are longing for this, but don't know how to get it, or aren't concerned with it, or are lonely and don't know how to take that step over top? How can we begin to take that step and initiate relationship? I think that is reconciliation. And then out of that is going to come weaknesses and failures and things like that. And then how do we navigate that? Well, once again, falling back on the gospel and reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, to acknowledge that it's not neat and tidy is really important as well, right? And so that we, to use the analogy, we're building bridges. We're going to do everything we can to reconcile to one another and to reconcile to the people around us and bring reconciliation in the world around us. But there's other people involved in that relationship, and so. Yeah. How do we navigate that? Check our own hearts, and then also, recognize the dignity of the other person's choice in this as well. But it's super important. I was reminded as we were talking, like, Jesus said, if you're offering your gift at the altar and remember that your brother or sister has something against you, go and leave your gift there. Go and make that right. That this ministry of reconciliation is actually more important than the worship in the temple at that time, and then that reminded me of King Saul, right? When he had instruction to annihilate the city, and he kept back some of the sheep and the cattle, and God said to him, "No, to sacrifice them." He wanted to sacrifice them. He thought he was doing something good for God. And God said, no, obedience is better than sacrifice. So again, for me, would I be willing, if I'm in the middle of a church service, when we gather together again for worship or whatever, and all of a sudden, if I'm sitting there, recognize, like, man, I haven't taken the necessary steps to bring reconciliation in this relationship, to leave where I am and go and make reconciliation, or at least attempt to do that. This is really the importance that Jesus places on that. That's scary to me. Like, it's really scary to me. Puts me in a vulnerable spot, and I don't like to be vulnerable.
But what that shows too is like we often want to talk about like if belief in Jesus is right. And I think that just shows that, yes, but it's also good. Like really understanding who Jesus is, he brings peace in sorrow. And so I think for a season I thought I could believe in Jesus because it was true. But I think when I understood the goodness of God in that, it really shifted things for me, and it clarified my vision. And maybe it's a little bit like driving. I had to turn down the music, make sure I knew where I was going. The noise.
Well,
but to understand his goodness, I mean, his goodness compels us. That's what moves us forward, I think.
And I'm not sure if you were going this way, Glenda, but it's also not only is believing in Jesus right and true, but it also works in relationships. And, following his example, following his teaching, following, the life that's laid out for us here also makes for great relationships as well. And what Jeremy was mentioning here, if we walk into our relationships with humility, like I think one of the things I told my kids that's one of the greatest parenting tools is don't look at me for perfection. Don't look at me for, your view of God, because I'm fallen. The thing you want to look to me for is somebody who will come to my kids and say, you know what, I messed up. I need you to forgive me. I am sorry. Can you forgive me? And I think that's one of the most important things that I've taught my kids is that I need their forgiveness regularly because I'm not perfect. And so this ministry of reconciliation, which Christ provided for us, this is the way it really lives out. If you go to your workplace and you humbly come to somebody and you say, you know what, I wronged you. Will you forgive me? All that it's going to do is it's just going to take that relationship and grow it. It's kind of freaky because you think when you go to somebody and you ask them for their forgiveness that they're going to think less of you. But that's just a lie of the enemy. That's not true. They're actually going to think more of you. And they're going to think more of the gospel in that way there. So, yeah.
Also very true. I don't think that I hardly have a relationship I haven't had to do that with. It's very sad, but true.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's awesome as well. That's what grows our relationship, is that sort of transparency.
When I think of reconciliation, I usually start to think about Aboriginal people in Canada. That's where my head goes because that's probably been the most hot topic conversation for my generation in regards to reconciliation in Canada. And so one thing I'll get to, I want to know what you guys think, what stands in the way of reconciliation. And one thing that I just want to put out there, I want to kind of answer my own question, but I also want to hear what your thoughts are. I think white noise stands in the way. So what I mean by that is I remember being a first-year college student and had a friend who was Aboriginal, and I spent a lot of time sharing all of my opinions about it, and it had nothing to do with actually reconciling anything, and was just about me getting my opinions out there. And I want to call that white noise. It's like sharing all this white noise about what your thoughts are and all this stuff, when actually it's not helpful to the actual reconciliation part of things. So, I know that's completely true also with faith. Like, that is so true. Often it's all these feelings about what you think is right theologically, and that white noise actually like can hinder reconciliation. What are some other things that kind of stand in the way for you guys?
Yeah, I think for me, go Glenda.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it reminds me of 1 Corinthians 13. That's like, if really we don't have love in that, then we are really an annoying gong off to the side that just keeps clanging, and that gets really annoying. So I'd say the lack of love, like the idea that we can be right and not kind.
And I think for me, one of the pieces is so fear. Again, that I'll like blunder in my ignorance and make things worse in reconciliation. So there's a fear aspect of that, of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing and making things worse. And then the other piece, I think, is the immensity of scale is a little bit frightening. So, we can see it kind of from a corporate level. So how are we going to bring reconciliation between the church and people groups? And what I forget is that I actually just need to build relationships as well on an individual level. So almost that it was from a few years ago, right? Like think globally, act locally. And so bring it down to this level. And I remember hearing a speaker, I think it was at the Q conference in Nashville, and she was just talking about how if we want to see diversity and reconciliation happen kind of at the big corporate level, you have to examine your own life. Do I have friends who are people of color or from a minority group? And if I don't, then I can't expect to see things happen at the more corporate level. So that was a good reminder for me.
Yeah, and that's what I love about our intercultural ministry, is just the level of relationship building that's happening there, and just the enjoyment that they have of each other as they walk together. And I think, and just to reflect on what Levi said too there, the ability that we have to listen to people on both sides, not just those that have been, that are wronged, or the minorities or whatever, but can we also listen to each other? And I think, not only wanting to be heard, but to hear both sides in that way. And that's just relationship stuff. Am I going to stop and listen and be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry?
Definitely. All right, I think that's going to wrap up our Get to the Message time. We are going to move to this new segment called Community Time. Yay, crowd goes wild.
We need theme music.
We don't have any audience that we can see, so it's we gotta be all out there. Woo!
We should next time we should have party hats and little those blower things.
Yeah.
And then we put them on.
Shoot off streamers.
Yeah. I wish I could get little fake confetti that goes in. That would be cool. So community time. This is a time for us to talk a little bit more about how we can bridge the message into community, into a practical sense of living it out in community. And so I want to address the elephant in the room. Well, maybe it's not an elephant in your room, but for me, it was an elephant in the room. Jeff, you said something about block parties in September. We normally have a big kickoff party in September. Mm-hmm. Is this taking over? Is this the new thing? What are these block parties?
Yeah, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit, and we're sort of angling for a kickoff, because normally, like you say, we would have a kickoff, a huge party at our church, and then we'd have a big celebration afterwards, food, everything like that. This year, that's not going to be possible. So we are angling towards doing smaller parties in each community in Lethbridge.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the vision. What's the vision behind these block parties, community parties?
Yeah, so I'll take that one if you don't mind. That's our vision is we just what we've been talking about in terms of being ministers or agents of reconciliation in our world. We have to live this out, and so we want to gather people in relationship. And when we were talking about where can we best gather in relationship, it's not going to be in our church lobby for the time being, because we have to be physically distanced and there's protocols, but we're safer outside. So we're hoping we can do these outside, and it will be on the weekend of September 11th to the 13th. And the vision is to have it in as many, to have community parties in as many neighborhoods or communities in Lethbridge and surrounding area. And so we've looked at the community map of Lethbridge, kind of looked at the surrounding area of Lethbridge and broken that down a little bit. And we're going to try to find some leaders and point people to lead these community parties. And we think if it's a festival or a concert, you can have 200 people outside. But if it's a gathering, you can have 100. So just to be safe, we're going to probably keep it at the 101 because I don't know what this is. But yeah. So essentially like a party, a neighborhood party, a community party. We're hoping to have some food there, and we're trying to figure that out. Maybe some live music, some physically distanced games for the kids, and for anybody else that wants to play those. So for our church family, but also for our community around us, our neighbors around us, we want to host these community parties, as many as we can. Plus, Jeff laid down the challenge, and I get like a free meal if we get over 20. So Jeff's going to pay for my lunch or something.
An
like
element
that.
to competition.
Yeah, right? So you guys can help me out and lighten Jeff's wallet at the same time.
Oh.
I feel like if
that element of competition, Jeremy, and I'm surprised you didn't mention that you created some tension in your marriage today because you were the cornhole champion, and you had a little celebration, and maybe were you in Christine's face, or why did you get frustrated?
You know what? She was more frustrated just because I am so skilled. I didn't have to I just let the game talk for itself. And I won't mention in the regular cornhole, we had two kind of versions. So we had the one with just the one hole in the board, and then we had another one with like multiple holes with different point values. Yeah. And we played multiple games of the regular cornhole, and I won't mention how many points she scored on me in all the games that we played.
Nice.
I just let the game talk for itself.
Yeah, I played cornhole last night too, out at the Dirkson's house. Yeah, a great social distance game. But I got to admit, I choked in the end. It still bugs me. I couldn't sleep well last night because I lost.
I feel like we could have a church-like tournament at cornhole.
Yeah, man.
church-wide. We can get a digital screen outside, has the cornhole like scores for everyone.
Yes.
Now you're talking, Levi. Fraser. Yeah.
So what's funny about this is I asked Jared if I could Levi, we're off topic, but whatever.
That's okay. That's okay. That's the podcast.
You bring us back if you need to. But I asked Jared if I could borrow the church's cornhole for our Lakeview community gathering today. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. That should be great. And so I went looking for it and I couldn't find it. And so I was like, Jared, where is it? And he's like, it's in the youth room. I'm like, no, I can't. I don't think I'm blind. I think I'm actually looking, not like, our kids generally look for things, but I think I'm actually looking for it. He's like, well, maybe check with Levi. So I texted Levi, and Levi's like, yeah, it's in Caronport. So because they borrowed it for Youthquake. And so I had to send out to my community group today, breaking news, cornhole is quarantined in Caronport because of COVID. That's good alliteration right there. But then the Slomps came to the rescue because they had 2 cornhole games, and so they brought their cornhole and we played it. Yeah, it was awesome. Undisputed champion of Lakeview right now. We're retiring the game.
The things you guys care about, very interesting.
Yeah.
How have we not been playing cornhole for our staff lunches or something like that right now?
Oh my goodness.
Man, there used to be a thing, Jeff, before your time called Staff Olympics, Upstairs Olympics, actually called it, for all the fun people who worked upstairs instead of downstairs. Sorry, me and Glenda are the upstairs people. And we would play like cornhole and ladder ball and all these kinds of things and keep track of our scores. So
yeah, we would.
Hold on a second, Glenda. You're like mocking us for caring about this, but you were like the who's the head of the IOC? You were like the head of the IOC. You were like the organizer of the Upstairs Olympics.
Because I like the fun, but I don't care about the winning. But I do really love the fun.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't understand that. There's not one thing I
Although
understand.
me and Levi beat Pam and Jared a number of times. It was excellent.
Yes.
Yes.
We were
See, it's more fun when you win.
I just want you to know that we beat Pam and Jared.
Yeah, it's true.
Sounds a little bit like John in John's gospel. Like, yeah, Peter ran and so did I, but I beat him. To the tune. I won. Don't worry about it. I won.
That's right.
Okay, let's bring this back here. So community parties, I've heard community parties, block parties, and neighborhood parties.
Yeah.
All in this same conversation. What is the actual title that we're going with? Community parties?
Yes. Community
Yes.
parties. And why this is important, because I mean, we could call them neighborhood parties. That would make sense. But we also have like neighborhoods or communities outside of Lethbridge. And so we want all our communities to be involved in this. And so this can happen, all around us and in Lethbridge. And it's not just a block party, because I mean, I live on a block with another pastor, so it wouldn't be me by myself organizing the block party. But one of the things that in evangelism that makes it difficult is that, like, again, this is that ambassador piece. We feel like we have to go by ourselves, and we want to do things together in community for our community. So I think community parties captures that best. Although when you write it out, it looks like Communist Party, but it's not. It's Community Party.
You should get Jim Pinches to sing a song for it. That's what you need. A song, a theme song.
Yeah, jingle. A little jingle.
Yeah, a jingle.
jingle.
Jim Pinches, are you listening? We need a jingle.
I feel like the
Okay,
challenge has been issued.
Yeah.
Okay, this leads me to my next question. This is for everyone. What would you guys want at an amazing community party? This is like, if you could dream up anything, and if you are watching right now live, and you can even comment this, I might be able to pull it up here. What would you guys want if you had the most amazing community party?
No, just I need to know the rules. Are we
Karaoke,
talking, like,
does that
as
count?
if there
Karaoke?
was no. What? See this? Can you do that in COVID? Can we pretend COVID doesn't
Why
exist?
could you not karaoke? And
You're singing.
Oh no, you must. You can't forget. Oh, you're singing.
Yeah.
I forgot about that part.
I think we should keep COVID rules in place, because
The
most
Amazing
likely
Race.
COVID will be there. So
The Amazing Race. A local musician. A chili cook-off.
A neighborhood
trivia
like
night.
Amazing Race. Yeah.
A pick a theme. A
Food,
kite
you
flying
need food.
competition. Slip and slide. Bocce
Food.
ball.
Can I say food? Food.
food. Ooh.
Oh, pick a theme.
Ooh. Pick a theme. These are good ideas.
Workout. 1980s workout theme. Oh man. You know
These
you've
are
been
all
saving those
really
leg
good
warmers
ideas.
for something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't have
Yeah.
any leg warmers. Mhm.
Jeremy's been saving his leg warmers for something.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
banana clip. You know you want to. I still got a banana clip. I've been saving it for years. This very
Probably
moment.
back in.
For
Probably
all
have,
of those avid podcast listeners, Glenda is just like repeating all of the things that she has already said on the podcast. Karaoke, banana clips.
Yeah, I love karaoke. Banana clips. I know. Bring in Eric Braun. He'll sing some songs for you.
No,
Who do you
don't
know?
say that idea.
A
That's my
talent show.
idea.
A
That's from
kids
my
talent
community.
show.
Ooh.
I already booked Eric Braun for ours. So the Lakeview Community Group actually exists. And so here we go. Competition's on. Like this is serious, you guys. For everybody listening, like, it's first come, first book. So,
So you can have live music. People just can't sing along. So
Right.
if you are an artist, this is your time to shine. Like, yeah.
You could do one of those painting classes. Get everybody and do like a family painting thing. You have to paint each other's portraits or something, like some sort of painting thing. There is so many fun ideas. I love a party.
I think
that is not my community party.
Okay.
Going with the outdoor theme, I think I want to try and launch like a bocce tournament. But it will be a bring your own balls bocce tournament.
Yeah, that's
There's no
not
alliteration. That's not a good name, maybe. But
No.
anyways, But you
Sorry.
Sorry,
I
podcast
forget that you can't edit.
I can't edit. But no, like
we're live.
because I don't have bocce sets for everyone, so then everyone can bring whatever they have. Like it can be, you can have a baseball and a basketball as your choice, but like you choose what you want for the game, and that might determine if like you'll change the weight and everything of how you throw it. And yeah, I feel like it's
like
a new way to play bocce.
I like that. It's like that 7-Eleven Slurpee day where you bring your own container. So yeah, I like that. It can make it more fun, that's for sure.
What about an egg drop competition? Did you ever do that when you're like you go onto the roof, someone has to build something, you got to drop the egg?
Yeah.
Oh, kids like that.
Yep. Water balloon toss, the good old water balloon toss, because you can do that physically distanced. In fact, that's
Great
sort of
idea.
the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea. Good old fashioned water fight.
Yeah.
These are good tips. Is there any tips or like ideas maybe that aren't like necessarily activities, but more like what would the feel be? Like what would you want the feel of your community party to be?
Yeah, I would want and this again, like it's a little bit harder with our current circumstances because you have to be like physically distanced and things like that. But I want like just this like this buzz in the air of people talking, right? Like a cocktail party or a stand-up reception where people are just like having conversations and meeting neighbors, and just it's this sense of like energy and fun. And at the end of it, people are like, "That was good. I want to do that again." That's the any party. You just want that feeling of, man, that was fun. I want to do that again. And even for the planners, like that are super tired at the end of it because they had to do all the stuff, they have that same feeling of like, man, that was fun. I'll bring more people in to help me plan, but I want to do that again. That's sort of the plan I have. That's what I envision.
Yeah, and one of my big fears about planning things like this is when people come that nobody talks to them. And so just having enough people that are interested to say, you know what, no matter who it is, where they're at right now, if I've never seen them before, I'm going to have people that will go up and initiate conversation. We just had a Christmas party here in our neighborhood that I didn't organize. It was already organized by somebody else. And that was kind of the vibe that I got there. Anybody who came in the door, everybody was talking to them. Everybody moved around, milled around. Well, that felt good to me. When people are off by themselves, nobody's chatting with them, that raises my anxiety up a little bit.
I just want to clarify, you just had a Christmas party? Like, are you guys a little behind the times there, Jeff, or what's going on?
No, this is like back in September, right around the 20th.
Okay.
So.
The other day, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It feels like it was 6 or 7 months ago,
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. My last question about this. So we're going to need volunteers, you said. Is this like, does it all fall on their shoulders to plan these community parties? Like, what does that look like? What are we asking our people to do?
Yeah. It doesn't, well, I mean, we want people to kind of be the point person for this, but we also need people to jump in and commit to come and help out and be involved and do exactly what Jeff talked about too, like to be ambassadors, to make sure that when people walk into the space, whatever that is, whether it's green strip or street or whatever, that people are talking to them, greeting them, saying hi, making sure they're welcome, those types of things. But this is not a one person task at all. This is us. We have to do this together. And I think the church is gonna, I don't think the church is gonna come along and support you. And this is the thing that, like, I remember a long time ago, Sid Coop, who was youth pastor at the church back when I was a youth pastor, we were talking about this. And again, this sense of like, we come to church, we come to a gathering, and then we have to go out on our own and evangelize. And what would it look like? How could we like help our students? How could we be there for them and do this together with them? And so we really want to have that sense, like we're doing this as a community for our community. And so we want to partner together and brainstorm together and have the best ideas, like 80s workout theme parties.
Best ideas.
And
Yes.
and like learn from each other and all these things. So yeah, it's not all in one person. and we want people to be praying. That's really right now, just it starts with prayer. Like, Lord, what would you have me do? Lord, if we're going to be outside, please give us good weather for that weekend. Who should I who should I contact? Who'll come along with me in this journey? And just start praying, because the reality is, in my own fear, I have the kind of the big level fears of like, what if nobody wants to do this? What if this all fails? What if it rains? What if there's an outbreak of COVID and we have to shrink our gatherings? All those big things, but even just the personal, like, okay, I'm gonna have to knock on some doors in my neighborhood. That's not my favorite thing to do. So it's just, I'm gonna start praying about that, like, because I have fears in that and stresses that go along with that. That's not my natural fun thing to do for me. So start by praying.
Yeah. If this is like getting your heart just so excited and so happy, you're like, man, I really want to start this for my community. You can literally text, contact, email, somehow any of us in this podcast, or like the church office. We will connect you. We want you on our team as we try and like shift this out into our communities. Also, special shout out for my community. If you are in Park Meadows or Majestic Place, we don't have anything going on right now. Let's get something going on. We can be planning for that September time frame. It sounds like Jer's got something. Sounds like Glenda's got something. Sounds like Jeff's got something. Us Northsiders, we need something here. So come talk to me, and I would love to start something with you. Okay, we are moving to the hot seat. The hot seat. Yeah.
A shark.
Yeah.
So the hot seat is a time for you to ask questions. This is live. So you can ask a question throughout the week using menti.com. That's anonymous. You can also put your questions just in the comments and I can pull it up on the screen. So right now, we have a few different questions in there. One of the questions is this, and I might just have to answer this one. Why was the podcast changed? I was an avid listener and I really appreciated the authenticity present with the original team. I don't think this is anything against Jeremy and Jeff. But if I can answer, one, you just made my heart really happy. I also love how the podcast went, but it's the summertime and we were thinking about taking a break from the podcast for the summer because people are on holidays, people are all over the place, and things are just kind of shifted. So instead of just taking a break, we decided to try this out as this live format, put in a few different things in there, talk about community time. It's a trial. This might not go on for the whole summer, but right now we're liking it. And so, but I assure you that come September, we will be back with the regular podcast team for season 2. So don't worry. We will be all back. Just some people are on paternity leave, some people are on holidays, and it's just not going to work out for the summer. So that is that question answered. Second question. This one's primarily for Glenda.
Oh dear.
Yes, don't feel too worried. Do you feel valued and listened to as a woman on staff?
I get that question actually quite a bit. Absolutely, yes. There is things that I have learned through this process of working under different kinds of leaders, working on different teams. Like my whole team switched this year. I'm on actually me and Jer stayed on the same team, but everybody else switched. So my team switched. So it's interesting process. And the one thing that I think I've really been learning through this experience is don't take what someone is branded or stamped as and let that dictate how you feel or a relationship about something. I think when we throw around words like egalitarian, complementarian, feminism, any kinds of words like that, like we can kind of, they're clarifying, but they can also be divisive in some ways. I'm answering this off the cuff. I don't know. So I think you have to make sure that and as if you're a woman and you are working somewhere, you know if you are valued or not. And so take that at what it means. Don't let titles define things. So we have a great working relationship. I don't know how many of you know people. Probably all of you know people on staff. And I think what you will hear over and over is our staff really does love each other. We are in it, and we are in it for the discussion, but there is respect, admiration for one another. And I really do feel like I have a voice. We lead each other in different ways. So we do not have, like, every morning we pray, different people lead that, men and women lead that, young and old lead that. There is no discretion about those things. We share readily and openly, and we share and devotionals and things before staff meeting, and those are also men, women, young, old. We all share that. So I would say I very much do feel valued and heard. There's we have lots of discussions about things, and this is a discussion that we've probably all had together at some point, all of us sitting on this podcast, and they're good and they're rich and they're challenging to all of us, I think. So I absolutely do feel valued in my role. And in fact, one of the first things that when Jeff moved in, I mean, we worked under Ian for a long time. When Jeff moved into the role, he said to me, if you are not flourishing in your role, then I am not leading well. So that spoke volumes to me.
Yeah, I love that about our staff team, that we are so close that it doesn't seem like there's these like titles that separate us. Like age, gender, those things don't really separate us. They don't separate our conversation and the ability to feel valued or listened to. And I know as a young person on staff, I don't feel that either. And so, yeah, I love working at eFree because of that. That sense of equality. That's the right word. Yeah. Equality.
And in any team, there's bumps along the road. So in any team, you're going to have to work something out. Like, hey, actually, I'm not sure you heard this, and that's just the point of what we talked about earlier, building relationship and going to one another. So I think it's an integral part, and that we are really good about that.
Mm-hmm. That's really bringing the whole eFree essentials, non-essentials thing to a forefront. Essentials, unity; non-essentials, charity, and everything Jesus Christ. I really feel like that describes our staff. We are very unified in the essentials, and we love to give charity in the non-essentials and listen and value each other in their opinions. And so, yeah, that's very eFree of me to say. So.
Well done. We should have confetti for that too. Way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe Jeff will take you for lunch.
Yeah, maybe I get a free lunch now.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing, or like one of the good things about that, Levi, is that on our staff team, it's not, and Glenda, you referenced this, like, it doesn't mean that we don't disagree or have hard conversations, and sometimes even transgress one another in that, in the way that we approach those conversations. But we're trying, like, I'm really committed to believing that ethos can be lived out in our community of staff and in our congregation. And it's hard sometimes to live that out because because I feel like I can put a period at the end of that sentence. And yet I just believe that the vision of the kingdom is that. And so it goes back to that, being agents of reconciliation. How do we live this out? Can we be different and still united and love one another in this way? And that's huge. It's hard, but it's really important.
And we're never offended by the question. So if you're ever wondering, ask.
Yeah, definitely. We got one last question here, unless another one pops in while I'm asking it. The question says, I've noticed online, I've seen a few pastors not socially distancing. When we do open up in person, will you keep us safe? That is the question. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
Is that me? I posted a picture of my friends. They're in my COVID circle. I'm so sorry. That scene. Yeah, I never think about. I mean, I think about COVID, but I don't always think about people's perception. It's a good reminder.
And it's hard. It's difficult. This is part of the conversation we're having in our own family as well. Like, we need these relational connections, and even with the Lakeview gathering, that's really good for us. We had a really fun time with the people that were out there. It was a little bit windy today, but nice and warm. Relational connections, and we need to be leaders, and we need to set an example for our kids, and people are watching us, and we want them to feel safe in this too. So I totally get the tension in that question.
Yeah, and I mean, at some level, I'm not sure what the pictures were exactly, but at different events, when we're not controlling, and when I say we, I mean the leadership of E3, when we're not necessarily controlling how the event is organized and what they're doing, I think probably some pictures of me hosting a wedding, this sort of thing. We were in the zone of how they were laying that out, and probably I wasn't thinking about it particularly, but you're outside, you're with 20, 25 people, that sort of thing. You probably transgress some boundaries there for sure, and that's not good or right. But when we start meeting again on August 16th, as I've already mentioned, August 9th, it's going to be a practice. This is a practice to say, hey, we need to make sure we're keeping social distance, make sure we're wearing masks in the situations that we are. We make sure that we know how to keep the places where people are meeting sanitary, all those sorts of things, because we value our people. We value this situation. We value those people who are immune compromised or have contact with people who are, and that's like all of us. And that's been why we shifted to online when we did, and that's going to continue to drive us in this way. Are we going to be perfect in this? Man, I hope so. But at the same time, I know there's going to be some circumstances where they're not. And so the same thing I said applied to our staff. Our building is open. I want you to feel like you can come and you can be a part of this, and we are going to apply the same rules. But if you don't feel safe, we have other options for you to connect with staff in this way. And so that's the same. We're still going to be putting emphasis into our online services. And in fact, we know statistically that somewhere between 20 and 50% of people will show up to an in-person service because they feel comfortable with it. And the other people don't yet.
And we're gonna, and this again, I think it comes back full circle to what we were talking about in terms of being ministers of reconciliation. Yeah. We want to love people well, and I noticed it when Marley did the baptism last time. She so desperately wanted to give a hug at the end, right? I saw it. Like she even opened her arms, but knew the way to demonstrate love right now is not to do that, not just for the person being baptized, but for the whole community that's watching us as well. So we want to demonstrate love well in these things and be agents of love and reconciliation in our community and in our church family.
Levi, you need a hot seat. Levi, you need a hot seat question. What is your favorite? What is your favorite car sing song?
Favorite car
at the top of your lungs.
Yes.
I don't know. I can't think of any other hot seat question.
Yeah, can you actually arrange it so that we're at the top and you're at the bottom now, so that we can
do that?
You're in the hot seat.
Is that possible?
I wish that I could do that. I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this.
All
so,
fair enough.
What is my favorite in the car song?
Yeah, song. The sing
along song.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I go through a lot of different phases. This is the hard part. I don't want to say what I sing to because people might judge me. I sing to a lot of the top 40.
We're for sure going to judge you.
We
top
will.
40 songs.
We're going to judge.
Unless it's Jeremy Camp, then you're fine. But other than that.
He's a little
It's
too
not
rocky.
Jeremy Camp.
Well, it's got to be Handel's Messiah.
I like
David
Beyonce.
Reeves.
I really do like her. Me and Jordana walked down or came out of our wedding, like back. I don't even know what that's called. Our walk out song, I guess. Walking out of our wedding to Crazy in Love by Beyonce. So if that ever comes on, that's totally my jam. We had some clean playlist of Pitbull on the other day. Some of the classics, like from when we were in high school and college, and there was a little bit of a party with. My son is really into dancing, so so there was a dance party at my house. So
Listen, if we go test speakers for anything, Keenan has a Pitbull song that he plays anywhere you test a speaker. Seems to be that kind of song.
Nice.
oh, that's awesome.
You know what? A great question would be, what was your walkout music to your wedding? That would be a good question sometimes.
Yes.
The walkout. Like not the walk in, but
not the walk
Ours
in.
is probably
always...
Sandy Patty.
Oh yeah. You can go on a cruise with Sandy Patty. Did you know that? John Acuff promotes it all the time because he loves Sandy Patty.
Nobody knows who Sandy Patty is anymore.
But she can hit the high notes.
She can hit the high notes.
You're gonna have to look her up.
Yep.
She's probably on YouTube.
Well, I think that's all we got for the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, either watching or listening throughout the week. We loved having you with us. But for now, I just want to say, see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Great week.